Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're all here as part of Beekeeper's Frontline Success Summit, and in this session, we'll be covering the future of frontline work. My name is Daniel Studboiner, and I'm the Chief Customer Officer and co-founder of Beekeeper. And I'm delighted to welcome and introduce these two great speakers we have here today. Heinrich Supthut, who goes by the nickname of Subi, so you will hear me call him. He's a manufacturing manager at ABB, responsible for the production of ETO drives. ETO stands for Engineered to Order. Subi has more than 40 years experience in the industry and not only understands the language and challenges of the frontliners, but also experiences them in first person on his day-to-day. We have also Alex Barber, who is a former frontline manager at Bayersdorf and Tesla, where she was responsible for improvements in supply chain management and operations. Alex is also the founder of Frontline Sidekicks, an organization that helps manufacturers upskill their frontline workforce and create a more worker-centric leadership culture. So with that, welcome Alex, welcome Subi to our session around the future of frontline work. So today's agenda has three main parts before we jump into a Q&A. We will start with the current situation and challenges from the perspective, of course, of Alex and Subi. We will then uncover what can and is being done during these times of uncertainty. And then we will discuss an outlook into the future. Let's jump straight into our first topic about the current situation. And we know that these days, being in the manufacturing industry confronts you with multiple challenges. We have the backlog from the COVID years. We have intensified supply chain and logistics disruptions, and of course, the labor shortage, which makes it very difficult to find talent to fill all the production lines. So my first question will be, how have you been dealing with these things in your daily?
Yeah, Daniel, not a day without surprise. My biggest headaches at the time being disturbances and reliability. Disturbances is missing material, not working logistics, resources, quality, and that leads to multiple changes. Talking about reliability, with all that possible disturbances, you never know what's going to happen next. And today we are facing a situation where the material is promised for tomorrow from the supplier. Today, we build up the shift for tomorrow, but the material does not arrive tomorrow. That's what I understand with reliability. Sometimes you cannot even reach the supplier because they are knocked out by Corona. They may not able to pick up the phone because they are in such a mess with the same problems like we are facing, missing material. So the situation is a situation, you mentioned that in the beginning, I have 40 years of experience in industry. I've never seen something like that. It's a real big challenge, and a big thank you to the first level manager in my organization, because those are the guys handling the situation. Those are the guys calming down the people, the worker. Those are the guys talking to the upper management. I believe this is, at the time being, the most important layer in my organization.
Yeah, you mentioned it, especially the first level manager, the frontline managers. I cannot agree more. Having been in the situation, it's really a complete communication chaos. If everything changes on a daily basis, you expect tomorrow to look a certain way, and then it looks completely different. You have to communicate to your workers, you have to communicate to planning, you have to communicate if, for example, I was in the logistics department, so I had to communicate to production, and every time it's really out of the blue, like there's nothing else you're doing but communication. You can't work on any improvement projects. You can't work on leading your workers in a certain way, doing one-on-ones. Anything that you're doing is communication and crisis management. And I also experienced that in multiple ways. You have that with material shortages. You have that during Corona. We even had a year ago, we had a big snowstorm in Madrid. You wouldn't expect a snowstorm in Madrid. And it was the biggest one in 70 years. And we were completely snowed in. And we still had to make sure that everyone got to work. And for a week, the only thing I did, I was WhatsApping and calling workers to just arrive to work to see, can they arrive by car? Do they have to be picked up by a bus? That was literally all I did. There is nothing else that you can do. And that's also such a waste of time and potential to just be doing that all day. And I feel like this is just a big problem at the moment, being in crisis mode and not being able to communicate well with your frontline workforce and also even with the other departments.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And impressive to hear from you also, Subi. In 40 years, this is like an extreme scenario that you're experiencing. And as you mentioned, Alex, going through crisis mode now for quite some time. So clearly these situations really bring management, frontline teams to the limit. It seems very hard to being able to sustain the situation for a long time, or even, I don't know if you have some goals to achieve efficiency gains. What have you been doing to improve the situation?
We just try to survive. That's the most important thing at the time being. Like, we are far away from any kind of being efficient. Give you a short example. Due to some essential missing parts, which are just not able to get on a free market, we assemble a product, we test the product together with the customer, having a factory acceptance test. And after the test, we take out those parts because those parts are needed for the next job. And later, when we have the parts, we will ship it to the site. So assembly, disassembly, and so on. That's definitely not efficient. We do planning in the good times. We did once a week planning. Now we have to do 2-3 times planning. What has been agreed in the morning is completely different in the afternoon. Everything is new. One at the time being is stabilizing production, stabilizing processes, because we just reach limits. If you shift projects all the time, that has an impact on material delivery. Some material is arriving, but some material is missing. That will block up the whole factory. What are we going to do with the material that is here, but it is not needed? That has to be shipped to some places. They are now all occupied. It's really amazing. And it takes a lot of prioritization. It's a heavy job for all the planner. And what we saw during the last couple of months, crystal clear, that weak processes has become extremely obvious. This process may have been compensated in the past by other processes, so we were not really aware of the weak process. Now we see them crystal clear. The good or interesting thing is, as more as a process has been automized, as more resilient the process is, and that shows us a lot about the need of process automatization. Give you a short example. In the old days, we did some kind of safety audit that was done pretty much paper-based, manually. The task of that audit is you observe your workplace. Is it safe? Do I know what to do for today? The tools are safe. The tools are in good condition. My safety equipment is working, etc. And this has been reported in paper. We had optimized that together with the help of Beekeeper, and it's now a digital process. It's not because of the paper. I don't mind. It's just in the old days, you had to turn in a paper to your group leader, and this guy had to store it some way to digitalize the information somehow. And this is a process that can kill you. So if you have that automated, so you just enter the information, you immediately get an alert if something is unsafe, and the group leader just has to focus on the unsafe situation and not in how to store information. That helps a lot, and we are very thankful about those kind of automatization, digitalization of the processes. So I think this is a good example how to survive in times like that.
Yeah, maybe I can even add to that, because you were also mentioning how you saw the weak processes now. And I think actually the frontline workers are the ones that feel the problems immediately at all time, especially in crisis, but probably even before that on a daily basis. And because they feel the frustrations, right? They have to deal with all these processes on a daily basis. And they're also the ones who know best how to fix them. So I think one of the things that might be a good solution in times of uncertainty, and also when there's not a lot of time left, is those quick wins. What are the small processes where the workers know that it doesn't work, and they even have like small ideas? For example, they know how to make the process more efficient and know how to fix it quickly without having to take a lot of time, then they also should be empowered to do. And I think that's often missing, that everything goes through the team leader or through management. And until all the ideas are maybe, many have maybe those idea boxes, which are great, but often I remember even having 160 ideas on my table, and now I'm supposed to work on that and implement them. It's really difficult. It's such a huge administrative load, and it ends up getting stuck. And I even saw it at one of my clients, that they had a process that they, for example, were delivering on the logistics side their products in different boxes, and they had their shipments to their own facilities, which they never counted the boxes because it was their own facilities. But then they also shipped to clients. And there somebody had decided, because it's an external client, they needed to start counting all the boxes at the very end of the shift and put it all into the system. For 3 years, they were doing this. No one checked any box that came back. No one checked at the client. It was completely senseless. And they wanted to get rid of it for a long time. And it was stuck in the team leader's mailbox and just never got done. And this was like literally like an hour of work a day that was wasted. So these are the type of things. I think it's important that the workforce is empowered to make small decisions at least, and to do those quick wins. Like I, for example, don't have an engineering background. I'm a business student. So what I did was often ask like little questions, challenge them and coach them, but let them come up with the solutions and take initiative of those solutions and being able to fix them.
I like your comment. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was curious to hear, how are you collecting all these inputs from your teams?
Yeah, that's difficult. Like I said, for us, it was paper and a box.
In the old days, we also collected, we call it CI proposals, constantly improvement proposals. We collected them by paper. And we always thought, why do we have so less feedback from the crew? Are they not interested in giving feedbacks? What is going wrong? And the few paper we received, which is discussed in the team, I was normally like that. We have a proposal from an employee. I have difficult to read it. I do not really understand what he means. You know what, folks? I will go back and talk to the person. And then we realized that paper is a wrong medium for frontliners. And we thought if we could change that process from paper to a digital platform, for example, Beekeeper, that may give us a change. And I tell you what, we were overrun by the amount of proposal coming in via Beekeeper, because it's amazing to see difficulties to write on a paper, but brilliant in bringing in some ideas in a digital format using spell check. It's something different. People today have difficulties in handwriting, but they can discuss, they can bring in ideas on a mobile. That was amazing to see. And at the same moment when we started that, we discovered something in addition. Since we had that on a platform, everybody was able to comment the proposal, and we got feedbacks. And from 1 second to the other, we understood, hey, wow, that problem description is really hitting the bottom. Because we got 10 feedbacks, we got 15 likes. That is really an idea worth to think about. And it was just game changer in that organization. We tripled the proposals just in no time. And it was so much fun to have that with a picture, good description, with the likes, with the comments, that we started kind of a competition. Who will turn in the most proposal? I don't mind whether they are good or bad, just the number of proposal. Because I say, if you buy 1 million of oysters, you may get the pearl. Then we honored the one coming in with the best proposal in regard of money of savings. And then my most favorite discipline is the no-brainers. No-brainers are ideas which you have seen for years but not realized. Stupid example. In the design, there was a screw. If you open the door, the head of the screw was touching a sticker or label. And sometimes before we had delivered the product, the label was already scratched. For years, we were walking by, and it took an external temporary worker to put a finger on that to tell us, hey, that's not good. So that are the no-brainers, and I just love them. So I really see a benefit in involving the people and listen to the feedback. I like it. I believe in that, Alex. I really believe.
I think that's actually a great example that you mentioned. And obviously the frontline workers they appreciate that you ask for their opinion, but not just that you ask for their opinion, but you also involve them. You ask for their feedback. You see what is the most pressing issue. And this also makes them more engaged, and they also feel like responsible, more ownership of the project, and maybe even proud that the idea that they came up with was implemented and helps like all of these other colleagues having a better day-to-day in their jobs. And I think one other thing that is also important to mention, and I know it's probably the first thing that isn't done in times of crisis, is training. So I know that's usually the first thing that we don't do because we don't have time, we don't have people, we don't do training because how is it supposed to be done? But we can also use the idle time, the times when we have organized the shift to work and then the material doesn't come, or where other issues happen. There is definitely idle time where we have workers standing, waiting for products, waiting to work. And to give an examples, we also had, it's a little bit longer time anyways, but we also had a cyber attack where during that time we obviously couldn't work. And in that week, we quickly organized to do all the safety trainings that had to be refreshed with external providers. But it can also be something else. It can also be little things where the workers teach each other and to become more versatile in the skills that they have, maybe on one line or in one area. So that can also be an idea that can be used during that time.
I love to hear on one side how empowering and involving the frontliners actually helps the entire organization be better. On the other side, I hear a lot of responsibility on the frontline manager. So also you mentioned Subi before, these days you're having managers planning and replanning during the day. So things change, evolve, they need to communicate it to a team. And at the same time, like you mentioned, Alex, they are responsible for motivating the teams, for engaging them, for training them, and of course, to keep it in a safe work environment. So it seems a lot that they are actually carrying on their shoulders. Is there a risk, or have you seen a risk of frontline managers becoming a bottleneck?
I surely see that. Absolutely. I think this is a very serious topic. First of all, they are dedicated to the people and to the company and the job. And they are the firefighters. first level firefighters. And at the time being, we are trying to staff with temporary worker. Even if they are temporary worker, you have to have a hiring talk to the candidate. You have to recruit them. You have to onboard them, equipment, safety, clothes, etc. Then you have to train them into the topics, in the assembly topics. You have to perform safety trainings. You have to do performance talks. That's something we do twice a year. This is a huge load. And what we see at the time being, we have hired a lot of people, but due to the situation we are in, a lot of the people already left again. So you train somebody, and a few months after, you have to train the same thing again. I think I mentioned that in the beginning. This is probably the layer of people in my organization with the biggest load on the shoulder.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I felt that load on my shoulder. And I do feel like, for example, I was leading 35 to 40 people. Maybe some are lead just 20, but we all know this doesn't really exist in finance or marketing, to just give an example. And it's really, we can think about maybe having structural changes, maybe having smaller teams, giving more responsibility to multiple people, to not have that all on one shoulder. But I think there also needs to be more support for frontline managers in terms of coping with the stress that is happening on a day-to-day basis. Mental load is huge. You have to think of everything, so many little things, so much administrative work, like you were also saying, and train this new guy, train that new guy, a safety issue. It never stops. It never stops even when you go home, because the factory still runs and you can still think about it. And that's why I think it's also really important to help with the stress factors, give support on that side, and not make the frontline manager the weakest link, and also help with digital tools. Like we were just saying, what we also saw in the keynote speech earlier, to make it easy to communicate, to assign tasks, to see everything in one place, and not having to run around and call people or go places to be able to communicate. And one other thing that I think is really important is leadership training, because many who become frontline workers are great at technical skills. They also need to learn how to lead themselves and lead others. And that's why I think that's really important. I don't know how it is with you. Do you guys do leadership training?
That's the advantage in working in a big company like ABB. We have leadership trainings. We have a lot of trainings in that organization, how to cope up with stress and all that thing. But at the time being, we do not have to. And most of the trainings are created for white collars. If I don't know how many of you have been seeing the intro, there was a statement that the blue collar worker, they are in a different environment, working on their feet, hands-on, etc. A lot of the developed trainings, they perfectly fit for a blue collar used to work in front of a computer. This is completely different and on the shop floor. To put somebody on a computer to attend a training, this is always something unusual. And that requires always some kind of preparation, stupid things like having a computer ready that the person not used to that medium is able to join a meeting. That's where it begins. It's a challenge, and in times like that, we just don't have the time. We just don't have the time for that.
If I can chime in here, the topic of training is extremely important, tailored for the blue collars, for the frontline teams. So actually, if any of you is interested in the topic, we have a session following this one in another breakout room around flexible learning and development for the frontline. So I encourage you to join that one. Just looking at time, I like to jump to our last part, which is looking into the future. So how do you expect this to develop further? Do you foresee a change or improvements in the upcoming months?
Future in production is people focused. I believe we have to find ways to balance white collar and blue collar and bring them somehow closer together.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And maybe even to add, I think maybe the reason why I actually think maybe it's not just bringing blue and white color together, but I feel like maybe we even create a no color, or some call it gray color model, where I hope for all of the processes that are very repetitive, they can be automated to be not being done by blue color anymore, but that it's a combination that now we work with the digital tools, with all the automatizations, with the AI that we have together. So in the end, it wouldn't be, and then we also have to also think properly. So for me, it's more, combining those two and having a worker that doesn't do only hands-on work and the one that thinks, but to have something that comes together because of automation that enables us to do. And I think that's what I'm actually looking forward to.
Love that. Thanks a lot, both of you, Alex, Subi, for these eye-opening insights. Looking at the time and just a message from Paulina on some technical difficulties, I'd like to move on and actually summarize maybe the three main takeaways that I, of course, took from this conversation. The first one is clearly that the frontliners are the first ones to feel the crisis, and the frontline managers will be the ones that are under the highest pressure. So it's really important to coach your frontline leaders to be resilient in times like this. The second one, and I really like the examples you shared, especially you, Subi, around automation and digitization of processes. That will be the key towards efficiency. And focusing on those small wins. I love the story of that part-time worker you had on identifying those small wins, improving everything that will make the life of the plant better, eliminate any physical paperwork, and make sure to streamline processes, to spend more time actually on delivering the output that is needed. And the third one is around innovation and ideas. I really liked how you were collecting these ideas from your frontline. So actually, your frontline employees are a great source for innovation and ideas. Make sure to empower them, to engage them, and focus on fixing those no-brainers that will make their life easier.
Alex, so that was one. My number one issue is that C-suite and other senior management are increasingly relying on technology to know what is happening at the front line. That is on metrics, analytics, ML, and AI, which are reductionist at best and are often. So the question was, how does Beekeeper help with this? And maybe we can extend it to Subi and Alex. How can we make sure that those technologies are really giving us the right picture and not just some cold numbers? If that makes sense.
I don't know, Subi, do you want to go or?
I don't know. I think it's a challenging question.
I agree.
And I'm sure, Alex, I'm going to need your support. I believe the first thing is manager have to understand that the needs are different from the shop floor workers. And to make that understood, that's a huge step. Don't underestimate that. And when they understand this, they will start understanding that the figures they received are sometimes different if you look at with the eyes of a shop floor worker. So I believe the best thing to make people understand what it means is offer them a day working in a shop floor and do some cabling. Use the tool the shop floor worker is using. And see, we just recently introduced a huge tool. Everything seems to be so easy. We struggled with entering a password. Do you believe that C-level manager understands that problem? They were just expecting that everybody's able to enter a password. So the first problem is on a level you cannot imagine. But in the same crew, you have a young guy able to do informatic in a way it just blows off your mind. So we have from unable to enter a password to a crack. And this is one of my biggest issues I have. How can I limited this wide situation I have. If you compare that with people in an office, I always say white collars are embedded in a digital environment. They are working with a computer. That means the communication is coming from digital to human being and going back in digital. And if you look at a shop floor worker, he may get digital information, but he always does analog things. And he transfers analog things later into a digital information. So it's really, I understand C-level manager have difficulties to understand that. And this is probably one of the fight you will always have. And yes, I believe Beekeeper can help, but it requires your support. Alex, now it's your turn to support that statement in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with leadership. And if you think about it, we have that class divide as well in the industry that causes us to think in groups and to misunderstand each other. And it's not just, for example, saying that the C-suite doesn't understand what's going on the shop floor. It goes vice versa. It's also often that the shop floor doesn't understand what's going on in the C-suite and that maybe they don't have time to come all the time. So I don't want to push it on one side or the other. I think it's just important to make sure that both sides understand each other better. And yes, it is definitely the responsibility to be on the shop floor, have a look what's going on. Maybe even we, for example, had a safety issue with repetitive work that caused injuries and back pain. And we just had somebody from HR, even like one of the HR managers, who just stood on the line for 8 hours and did that job to understand what that pain is. And I think these type of examples are incredibly important. And maybe even some sort of shadowing could also help to put yourself in that position. Because right now, like we said, there is this disconnect. Leadership is really out of touch, and we need to make sure that they come into touch in order to understand that. And that starts with physically going there.
And maybe go ahead.
One last thing. I was extremely surprised when I made the experience with Beekeeper. Frontline workers sometimes have hands like difficulties to hold a pen, but they can work with a mobile. This is amazing. And that's one of the huge benefits I see with Beekeeper. This is the medium, the platform they can handle. If they have to choose computer, tablet, mobile, they will always take the mobile. And I believe Beekeeper is extremely strong with that device. And so the answer, yes, Beekeeper can help, because the blue collar are able to maintain that device. Sorry for interrupting you, Daniel.
No, thanks, Subi, for sharing that. And I also wanted to give the perspective from the Beekeeper side, and starting with the C-suite, as you mentioned, Joe. Beekeeper becomes a window into the company for the C-suite. Pretty much what Alex was sharing before. And it's, of course, allowing the C-suite to look into the analytics, how many tasks are being completed, how fast are those being completed, how is the onboarding of new hires progressing, is that happening efficiently and aligned across the entire business. But besides the analytics is also the people topic, and that's also very important. We believe that the frontline team members are actually the competitive advantage for the frontline industries. So the beauty of Beekeeper is that bringing these two sides together. And for the frontline employee is, of course, having access to all the information they need to do their work at their fingertips. So hopefully, Joe, we were able to answer your question. We can also follow up after these sessions. Any other questions that the audience would like to ask? Otherwise, I have maybe one question if we have time. I see we have less than a minute actually to jump back to the main session. So it might be a bit challenging, but we can get started and see how far we get. And my question is something that we ask very frequently, especially in the manufacturing sector, the topic of private mobile devices in the production. What is your experience?
I love this question. I love it. I'm absolutely supportive of private devices in the production. First, it's just fair, because if you are an office worker, you can have your mobile on your desk, nobody complains. And sometimes it's so useful if you just can communicate with your wife, hey, please bring some coffee or something like that home. It's forbidden for blue collar, and that's not fair. This is one thing. The other thing is, imagine a device breaks down. Let's say a tablet in my production, an ABB-owned tablet breaks down in my production, and a private device breaks down. Which device will be fixed faster, and which device will create less confusion to the organization? It's the private device. Your employee will do everything to have his private device fixed in no time. So I think we should really start to understand that the mobile is a farmer animal and not the pet. It's not something to play. It can be a useful tool for a company. I say yes to all mobile devices if they are used in a meaningful way.
I agree with that. And since we don't have much time left, I think one of the important things is also to have Wi-Fi coverage, because there's lots of areas in logistics where the people use their private devices, but then they have to use their own data. And this actually happened to me, especially when you start up a factory, you don't have Wi-Fi everywhere. And all of a sudden they have their 2 gigs that are out. So I think that's in combination. If you do use them private mobile devices, make sure you can use Wi-Fi and the company network, because otherwise they are using also their private network and that costs them. Some just have 1 gigabyte, and I had workers that really ran out of it very quickly when you send each other pictures and videos of things. And that caused, quite some issues.
That's great advice, Alex. And we see actually that desktop workers are provided with Wi-Fi, but why not the entire organization? Definitely something to think about. So we have less than 30 seconds left. I want to thank you again, Alex. Thank you, Subi, for joining us today and for all the insights. And of course, to the audience, see you in the next breakout session.